to rent or to buy. It is probably one of the biggest, most emotionally charged financial decisions you will ever make in your life. For generations, the answer just seemed obvious, right? But today, the game has totally changed. So is buying a house still the key to building wealth? Or could renting and investing actually be the smarter path? All right, let's get into it. So let's just start with a bombshell from the Oracle of Omaha himself, Warren Buffett. He basically argues that tying up a huge chunk of your money in a single asset that you can't easily sell, your house, is often a really bad financial move, especially when you're early in your career and that money could be working so much harder for you somewhere else. But then, on the other side of the ring, you've got financial guru Dave Ramsey, and he champions home ownership. For him, a paid-for house is like the bedrock of financial stability, a proven tool for building wealth that lasts. So who's right? Well, the truth is, they both are, kinda. It all comes down to the numbers, your own discipline, and your life. So in this explainer, we're gonna break it all down. First, we'll look at the whole housing debate. Then, we'll make the strongest case for buying. And after that, uncover the hidden costs you never hear about. Then, we'll crunch the numbers, side by side. I'll even show you an investor's toolkit you can use. And finally, we'll wrap up with a framework to help you decide on your path. First up, the great housing debate. Is the American dream really a sound investment anymore? The idea of a house with a white picket fence, it's not just about money, right? It's baked into our culture. We're always told that renting is just throwing money away. But we gotta ask, does that old advice still hold up today? Okay, look at this. This really shows you how much things have shifted. Back in the day, maybe for our parents' generation, a house was about 2.5 times what you made in a year. Totally doable. But today, whoa. In a lot of cities, that ratio is just gone. We're talking 5, 10, maybe even more times your salary. The old rulebook, it just doesn't work anymore. But let's not just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's move on to the case for buying. Because despite all those challenges, there are some really powerful, data-backed reasons why owning a home has been a wealth-building machine for generations. And this number, wow. This is the core of the argument right here. A study from the Federal Reserve found that homeowners have a net worth that is, on average, a staggering 40 times greater than renters. 40 times! Now sure, correlation isn't causation, we get that. But a number that big, you just can't ignore it. So what's actually going on here? How does that happen? Well, it turns out home ownership has a few built-in superpowers for building wealth. First, you get a fixed housing cost. With a 30-year fixed mortgage, your main payment is the same in year 29 as it was on day 1. Can you imagine your rent staying the same for 30 years? No way! Second, it's like a forced savings account. Every single month, a piece of that payment goes to paying down your loan, building your ownership stake. That's your equity. And finally, appreciation. It's not a guarantee every single year, but over the long haul, real estate has been a pretty solid way to grow your money. But, and this is a big but, that is only half the picture. Now we've got to flip the coin and look at the side that most people conveniently forget, the hidden costs of owning a home. See, your mortgage payment, that's just the price of admission. The real cost comes later. Financial expert Ramit Sethi calls these phantom costs. And I love that term because they're the expenses that just sneak up and haunt your budget long after you get the keys. We're talking about property taxes, which pretty much always go up, homeowners insurance, and the big one, maintenance and repairs. That new roof you'll need in 15 years? Or the water heater that decides to explode on a holiday weekend? Yep, that's all on you. And this brings us to maybe the most important and definitely the most overlooked cost of them all. This is the idea that really drives Warren Buffett's whole argument. It's called opportunity cost. Think of it this way. Every single dollar you sink into a down payment is a dollar that could have been invested in something like the stock market, just growing and compounding away. And this isn't some abstract idea. It's a real, measurable cost that we're about to put some hard numbers on. All right, enough talk. Let's get to the fun part. Let's actually run the numbers in a real-world head-to-head showdown. We're going to see what happens when we pit owning a home against renting and investing that extra cash. Okay, so let's imagine a pretty standard $500,000 house. You do the right thing, you put 20% down. That's $100,000. Your mortgage on the other $400,000, let's say at a 7% interest rate, comes out to about $2,661. But wait, that's just the start. right? You got to add in property taxes. We'll call it $500 a month. Homeowners insurance, maybe another $200. And a pretty conservative budget for maintenance, about 1% of the home's value per year, tax on another $417 a month. So you look at all that, and your total cash going out the door isn't $2,600, it's almost $3,800. Big difference. So now let's see what that same house would rent for. And in a lot of places around the country right now, it is way cheaper to rent than it is to own the same place. Let's say you can rent that exact same home for $2,300 a month. Well, you do the math. That's a cash flow difference of almost $1,500 every single month. And that money, that is the jet fuel for the whole rent and invest strategy. Okay, so let's hit the fast forward button and jump 10 years into the future. The homeowner, they put down their 100K. After a decade of making payments and let's say some modest 2% appreciation each year, they decide to sell. After they pay off what's left on the mortgage and all the closing costs, they walk away with about $218,000. Hey, not bad at all. But what about our renter? They took their $100,000 down payment and put it straight into the stock market. And let's be super conservative here and say they only managed to invest $5,000 of that nearly $18,000 they saved in rent each year. Assuming a pretty standard historical market return of 10%, after 10 years, their investment account is sitting at roughly $339,000. So in this case, our disciplined renter comes out over $120,000 ahead. That's pretty wild. Okay, so that brings us to the most important part of this whole strategy. If you choose the rent and invest path, how do you actually do it? It's not enough to just save the money, you've got to put it to work. So let's look at some super simple but really powerful tools you could use, and we'll focus on some options from a big player like Fidelity. Okay, for most people, the absolute best way to do this is with low-cost index funds. They're simple, they're diversified, and they are incredibly effective over time. So for example, you've got FXAAX. That one tracks the S&P 500, so you're basically buying a tiny piece of America's 500 biggest companies. Or FSKAX, which is even broader. It's like buying the entire U.S. stock market in one go. And if you want to go global, FTIHX invests in thousands of companies all over the world outside the U.S. But here's the crazy part. Look at that expense ratio, 0.015%. Do you know what that means? You're paying just 15 cents a year for every $1,000 you invest. It is one of the cheapest, most efficient ways to build wealth, period. And this right here is probably the most important slide of this whole thing. Because all that math we just did, it only works if you have the discipline to actually follow through. It is so easy to let that extra cash just disappear. You know, a nicer dinner here, a bigger vacation there. That's lifestyle inflation. The reason a mortgage is so powerful is because it's a forced savings plan. It's automatic. So to win as a renter investor, you have to do the same thing. You have to automate your investments and treat that transfer to Fidelity like it's a bill you absolutely cannot miss. So we've crunched the numbers, but let's be real for a second. This decision isn't just about what looks best on a spreadsheet. A home is more than an asset. It's where you live your life, where you make memories. It gives you a sense of stability. So the right decision for you has to balance the dollars and cents with your actual life. So this is where we turn it all back to you. Which path is the right one for you? Because the best financial decision on the planet is the one that actually fits your life, your personality, and where you see yourself going. So how do you figure that out? Here's a little checklist. Just 5 simple questions to help you think this through. Number 1, are you going to live there for at least 10 years? If not, the insane costs of buying and selling could just eat up all your profits. 2, will your total housing cost, and I mean everything, be less than about 28% of your gross income? That's a classic rule of thumb to make sure you're not house poor. 3, have you saved up a full 20% down payment? This isn't just about avoiding PMI insurance, it's a huge signal that you've got your financial ducks in a row. 4, are you mentally okay if the value of your house goes down? Because guess what? It's not a one-way street. And finally, number 5, and this might be the most important, are you genuinely excited about this? Or are you just doing it because you feel like you're supposed to? So let's end on this because it's a really important mindset shift. If you run the numbers, you go through that checklist, and you decide that right now is not the time to buy, that is not a failure. You are not throwing money away. What you are doing is making a strategic financial decision. You're buying yourself flexibility. You're buying time for your investments to grow and compound. And you're buying the patience to wait for the home and the moment that is truly 100% right for you.